Hello, everybody. Welcome to Into the Score. My name is Avishai Darash. I'm your host for this podcast. In Into the Score, I talk to my favorite people in the fields of arts, politics, entrepreneurship, and anything else that comes up in our conversation. And today I have the great Itai Weissman.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure. And it's actually also our new setup.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very excited. I never had so many cameras facing my direction. I'm a bit excited and slightly nervous, but I'll do my best.
I think you'll do fine. I think it'll all be good. So, Itai, we know each other, I think, for almost 20 years.
Correct.
Now. And I wanted to ask you, because you actually had an integral part of me coming to Amsterdam.
Right.
But I wanted to ask you, why did you choose Amsterdam?
Well, like yourself, I was introduced by another friend back home in Israel, where I come from, and he studied here, and I heard about this place through him. He's a guitar player. His name is Avi Mishali. Lives these days in London, as far as I know. And I was looking for an abroad experience. And at the time, I didn't have the financial means to go to the States because it was just not really possible. Although I wished, like a lot of people do, or wish. And Amsterdam just seemed to be a very possible option to make financially. Back in the time, it was very, we're talking about 20 years ago almost. It was very, I wouldn't say cheap, but just very possible.
Yeah.
And I just went for it. I didn't know too much about this place. I just said, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. And here we are 20 years later. I'm still here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting, because I remember, it's funny because I remember that we talked about it before you left. And then I came to visit.
Yeah.
And I saw the school, which the only word that I can describe is Hogwarts. It was the old school. It
Correct.
was where the Conservatorium Hotel is right now. And I was kind of flabbergasted by the vibe there. And afterwards, it moved to the new place.
Correct.
Like when I came to do my audition, it was like, oh, this is completely different. It was this like modern box. Would you say that, was there a difference also for you, this transition, or how did you feel about it?
Definitely there was a change. There was something about it. I think the old school had, let's put it this way. I mean, where you're in a place with so much history. I mean, this building has been standing there way before even the school moved into it.
Right.
I think it was a sort of a postal bank or something in the beginning, if I remember correctly. But there's a certain energy when you step into a building that has so much history in it. I mean, the steps, the walls, the windows, everything looks so back in the day. And it just had a very comfortable, cozy vibe. And it's set actually in the middle of the city, which was also pretty nice because you had everything around you, like all you could really sense the city, the streets, the shops, going out for dinner, going out for lunch, going out to the supermarket, anything was just there, really next to the museum plant. So there was a lot of hangs happening. So it had a sort of I don't know, good feeling to it, to that place. Yeah. Not that the other place, when we moved there, was anything less than that. It was just a different experience because it felt like you moving from sort of like from old tech to high tech.
Right.
The new building has much more better facilities than the old one had. So we could really make use of that as well. And so it's just really it's a different vibe between the two places, and each one had his own beauty, and the new ones, as well.
So what I wanted to ask you also, because actually I want to be candid about it. It's the second time that we're doing it.
Yeah, correct. This is round 2.
This is round 2. Now, actually, with the proper setting. What I asked you the last time is about your musical influences? Because I know you very much as a hard bop, like traditional guy.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, fun, yeah, exactly. That's where we're gonna get to that. But then you made a pretty big impact with the Iwi.
Correct.
Because when I knew you, when we met in Jerusalem, it was like standards, language, very much like connected to the tradition. And later on, when we touched base again, I was like, yo, this dude is like doing some groundbreaking stuff with the Iwi. And also your identity kind of changed towards that, right? So could you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure, I can tell you a lot about that, as a matter of fact. So I'll try to explain it this way. I come from a musical family. Both of my parents were piano/keyboard players. My mom is a classical trained piano player, and my father, initially a viola player actually, that also could play good keyboards as a secondary instrument. So I grew up in a house where there was a lot of keyboard music around me, and that could be anything between traditional jazz to contemporary jazz to classical music to pop at the time, and so forth and so forth. But there was always a lot of emphasis on if it was maybe a piano player or a keyboard player or an organ player or a synthesizer player or so I grew up with these type of sounds from a very, very, very young age. And my earliest memory even, is from age of 6, where I'm completely hypnotized to a VHS cassette videotape of Chick Corea Electric Band playing in Spain, if I'm not mistaken. 1986, there's a documented performance, and I'm sitting there and he's covered with all these spaceships keyboards. I don't know how many he had there. And I'm digging it, and probably at the time I had no idea what I was listening to, but it was something about it that I really liked. So it kind of caught my attention. Later on, another memory is the same with Weather Report, and another memory is with Jimmy Smith, for example. So I always had this type of image / these type of sounds, these type of languages that they developed on these instruments, always in the back of my mind. My brother played saxophone, and in a certain point he stopped and put it aside, and I picked it up because the horn was in the house, and I went on and started playing on it.
How old were you?
10. And so I went and did that for a while. Got into saxophone for a while. Started studying jazz music because I just, I was into jazz from a very young age. Studied with private teachers later on and did my service in the Army Orchestra. And later on, I went to the Jerusalem Academy, as where I met you back in the day.
Right.
And after that came to Amsterdam. So there's a whole progress, a whole trip that I made with the saxophone up till the end of my bachelor's in Amsterdam, where I was doing that, digging that, diving into that, studying, progressing as much as possible, playing the saxophone. And at a certain point after that, there was a trigger. And the trigger was that when I started my master's in Amsterdam, they asked me to present a research program.
Proposal,
correct. And when I was thinking about it, because I took it very seriously, I thought to myself, could be something very interesting for me to do. And I was thinking and pondering about it, like, what should I do? Is this, what are the ideas? What's my direction? And then I thought to myself, hey, I remember 10 years ago, I bought this instrument called the Iwi, and I played around with it a bit, but I never really got too much into it. But I'm interested to get into it again. Maybe that would be an interesting project to get into. And I decided to go for it. And basically from that particular point, it's been a good amount of 14, 15 years, which I'm basically into it.
Wow.
And I'm very happy that I did that, because what it did, it sent me back in some way to my origins, to the beginning.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Because I am, as a saxophone player, I can play the instrument in a certain way. I can play keyboards, but definitely not on the level that is necessary to perform. But I could play saxophone on a good level. So the iwi for me was a certain bridge between the technical aspect of a saxophone, but the world of sound of electrical instruments.
Yeah.
Yeah. And since then, it's been.
Yeah. So like, what I like about the story is that you kind of made like a full 360 almost. Like
you may say so, yeah.
Yeah, like in the sense of you're telling about yourself being a child, sitting and listening to Chicoria Electric Band, and being like mesmerized by it.
Yeah.
And actually, like you didn't have. I mean, I have kids myself. You have kids. They don't have the mental capacity to understand why. They're just drawn into something.
Exactly.
And then you made a full circle after traveling, after actually learning more, expanding yourself.
Correct.
Starting to go back to the same point, but with much more knowledge in that sense.
Yeah.
Of let's say the intricacies of why it sounds like it sounded. Right, in that sense.
Well, now I understand.
Exactly.
But then I couldn't understand. But that's maybe also the point why it felt for me very, very truthful, is because I felt something, but I didn't understand it. And
exactly.
And when the feeling is that strong, talking about when I was a child, it's genuine, And that's for me the truth. Sometimes you don't have to understand things, but if you feel them, if you feel it and it's right for you, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I find it always fascinating. I mean, I remember with myself of being exposed to electronic music for the first time and being completely blown away by it, but then needing 20 years to understand why was I blown away by it and what it made.
Yeah.
So it's like a very similar story in that sense. And do you see yourself as an iwi player or as a saxophone player? Like, what in terms of identity, how do you
the thing is,
categorize it?
I see myself as a man that can offer, not offer, maybe put it the other way around. I see myself as a broad musician. The fact that I have access to so many type of sounds makes me very happy.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how to define myself as am I this or that, but the fact that I have this palette, which includes the saxophone in it, by the way, as well, fulfills me in my creation and the music that I want to make.
Yeah.
So I would just say maybe a broad musician.
And do you feel like, considering what you just said now, because you have access to so many sounds, do you feel that with the saxophone at some point it reached like a glass ceiling and you were like, I need to look for something else now?
Yes. Because the thing about it is for example, one giant hero of mine is Joe Zawinul.
Yeah.
And to me, what made him so special was the fact that, coming from jazz piano tradition, he was a pianist that played with Diana Washington, Cannibal Adderley,
absolutely,
and many, many more. Ferguson, I forgot his first name. Never mind. Big band leader, Maynard Ferguson. Yes. He was into that, but when he moved to electronical instruments, when he moved to the synthesizer, he developed a different language completely than what he knew on the piano. And that transition was something that caught my attention, because you can hear a complete different identity. So I was intrigued by the fact that I could, take an instrument that can help me reach certain things which I couldn't achieve on the saxophone, not physically, and not musically as well. Saxophone is a beautiful instrument, but it works in a certain way. Of course, there's ways you can stretch, and there's ways you can, it's a very personal instrument as well. So you have many different types of quality of tones by different players, which is, by the way, why I think this instrument is still going strong. And different to other type of woodwinds or brass instruments, the saxophone has it's a very broad instrument in terms of tone quality.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I was intrigued by the fact that I could break physics in some ways, because you could do things on the iwi which are not physically possible on the saxophone, and you can, of course, phrase differently on the iwi that it's not possible on the saxophone, and you can produce different types of sounds and dynamics which are not possible on the saxophone. So for me, that was like that. This is something that I want to get into, because I want to see how I'm going to sound with the iwi in comparison to the saxophone. And I can tell you absolutely, with not a doubt, that the iwi has completely changed my playing. Even when I go back to the saxophone.
Change your saxophone playing
Absolutely.
also. Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay,
so my approach to the saxophone is completely different, because I play the iwi. So it's more like, a languages thing. It takes you to different type of places. It's incredible.
Yeah, because I heard you with a group of friends. I was there in the Reflex with in the BIM house where you recorded the live album.
Yeah,
and I remember like sitting there and like hearing, seeing you play, but hearing something very unexpected.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like in terms of, first of all, just octave wise, like
correct.
Just that, like. Wow, so high, so low. In terms of parts, the parts that you could do, in terms of sound design, in terms of, so I can imagine that because you expand yourself like this, even when you go back to, let's say, the raw saxophone, in that sense, you look at it in a completely different way. Like, if I think about it, like my work with the orchestras and like arranging and all that, that really changed the way that I play because of that, because I perceive sound differently. So I was wondering, do you also experience that all of a sudden you hear the spectrum completely different?
Absolutely, because the thing about it's an instrument that, in my case, it's an instrument that can also surprise you. Sometimes I don't really know what I want. I just try stuff, and then you say, hey, this sound that I'm trying right now, it completely takes me to a different direction. Let's check this out to see what happens,
Yeah.
I have numerous examples I can give you, but it's just sometimes you don't know what's going to happen, and it's great. I enjoy it. I enjoy the fact that sometimes I can dial a number on my module or whatever I'm using at the moment, and without knowing too much, even when I play live, sometimes I just random touch stuff. And the computer or the module decides what I'm going to play, and I'm just going to go play it and see what happens.
Nice.
And maybe that sound has a certain edge to it in terms of how it reacts to the way that you play that will make you react to that, and you're like, well, man, okay, so we're somewhere else right now. So that's kind of the
because it keeps you on your toes. Actually,
it keeps you on your toes, but it also it challenges you, but it also makes you play different because you have to react to something which is non-familiar to you at the moment.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of cool.
That's awesome. And in which age did you understand that you want to do this for the rest of your life? I mean, let's say the rest of your life, who knows?
Well, yeah. But you mean playing the iwi?
Being a professional musician.
Being a professional musician. Well, I guess without thinking too much about it, basically from the beginning, it just from a very young age, I was into music and nothing else.
Yeah.
It chose me, I guess. I know, without saying it, I don't want to say any cliches. It chose me, but I just feel that it was a natural thing for me to get into music. I got into it from a very young age, and it just stayed with me up till today. I don't see myself doing anything else. There was no debate and no other thoughts about anything else. I just felt it, and I went for it.
This is actually a thing that I'm hearing quite often with colleagues or friends of like, it chose me, because the level of, and I wonder if it resonates with you also, like the level of sacrifice and the level of, let's say, time that you have to invest in something like this.
Sure.
You can't do it like, let me just do it a little bit and then see if I can actually make a career out of it. It requires full, tenacious like power to be invested constantly.
Yeah, man, it's a sacrifice. We pay a lot of things for that. It's not easy. But again, it's you gotta be truthful with yourself, I would say.
What do you mean by that?
Well, to me, I could go and do something else beside music. I definitely chose a path which is very challenging in terms of making it and trying to make a living out of it and all that, everything that comes with that. But at the end of the day, you got to be truthful with yourself and be happy with what you have, and if this is what makes you happy and gives you energy and inspires you to move forward, then what's the question?
Yeah.
But again, this is my personal experience. I definitely would not say to other people otherwise, but for me, as I said, we come to this point. If it feels right, you feel it, it's truthful, c'est tout. That's it.
Well, we have reached the interesting point of the podcast here, where we are going to go into the process of how the sausage is made.
Oh.
And I want to ask you about the worst experience you had on stage.
The worst experience I had on stage. Well, let me choose one of. When I was 15 or 16 years old, not sure. I think 15 15, I would say. I could, play a bit of jazz on my saxophone. I could play some blues scales and stuff like that. And, being a teenager that could do certain things, you kind of felt, good about yourself and
the Dunning-Kruger effect
and confident about it, and it's kind of funny when I look back at it, but yes, a bit of a cocky teenager that can play some blues scales. I was invited by a classical pianist, and we're talking about back home where I grew up, to play a concert of some jazz tunes. And the person that invited me, he was a very sweet person, but he was a classical pianist who basically read jazz out of the paper, basically out of the pages, which, you see what I mean, and he had a certain band in mind, and I came to the rehearsal, and I remember I was like, wow, man, this is not happening at all. I mean, it was slightly embarrassing, maybe a bit more embarrassing. I don't know how you should call it, but it was a bit, and I was definitely not happy about it. But I kept my mouth shut. And in mind, I'm a cocky 15-year-old guy, that can play some blues scale. So everything has to be in perspective here. Yeah. Came the concert. We go play the concert, and the concert was a disaster. Of course, to my ears, didn't work at all. The bass player, I don't know what he did. The drummer, I don't know what he did. He was reading charts out of a paper, trying to play solos written on paper. And I was like, man, I want to dig my head into the sand and get away from here. As soon as my part ended in the show, I happily went backstage.
Well, I need to ask you, where was the show? Was it like
it was in the conservatory in Be'er Sheva, in my hometown.
So it was also full, I guess.
Yeah, it was it was a whole it was a full house. And I studied in that school. Everybody knew me, and I knew everybody else. So it was a bit like that, and I went backstage, and I was, backing out bringing my saxophone to the case, packing everything in, and was happy it was over. But, and this is the point, in a certain point in the show, there was a sort of an encore, and this dear person, he said, "Hey, should we bring Itai back to play with us another tune?" And of course, the whole crowd was like, "Yeah, bring him over," So he walks to the backstage and he says, "Itai, come. We want to play encore. They want you to come back." Man, and I refused. I said, "No, I'm not coming." Now, you have to understand, he asked the crowd. The crowd said yes. He went backstage. And then when he came out, I was not there with him. So it was a very unkind deed on my behalf. But I couldn't go out. I said, "Man, I cannot do it. I'm sorry." I just left them hanging.
Oh, God.
So it was a sort of like, looking back at it, it was very cruel, I could say, but so that was one experience.
And mind you, you said one of many.
One of many, sure. Oh man, bad experiences happen all the time. And it's part of our progress, I guess.
Man,
right?
It's part of the business.
Yeah.
We have stuff that we're like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? And then you get up the next day and you're like,
yeah.
And that being said, what was one of the best experiences you had on stage?
Well, one of the best experience I ever had was in the United States. I went as an exchange student to Philadelphia, and I studied in Temple University. And we had the chance with the school big band where I was playing with to have a workshop with Benny Golson.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we had a whole day with him, and we played a concert with him.
Wow.
He was next to me, talking about jazz legends, and history and tradition and you name it.
How did it feel, man?
It's again, it's truthful. You sense it's something you cannot grasp until you're there. Listening to records is, of course, the close we can get to it. But when you sense the person next to you that much, it's just, man, it's beyond words, man. It's the truth, man. It's like, I grew up on all these stories. He told us a lot of stories there when we were there in that workshop. Man, I mean, back in the day, he was I think in his 70s or beginning 70s, explaining you about, hanging with Coltrane, walking in that street with this guy, playing with this guy. I mean, it was just it was a phenomenal experience to hear the sound of the person speaking, playing, his energy. It was incredible. So that night when we played that concert, and I was literally sitting next to Mr. Golson, playing his music, soloing on his music when he's there.
Wow.
What shall I say?
And how did it change the way you played, or was it like it became actually more honest? What?
It felt like it felt. You know what? I'll tell you something else. In connection to that, we played another concert with that big band without them. And we went to some sort of an elderly house in Philadelphia. People around in their 70s, 80s, sitting there. And we played, I think, even the same repertoire.
Okay.
Same type of
interesting
concert, same music. And you could feel that these people which were sitting there in their 70s, in their 80s, man, they know that music, man. So good that there was no joking around. You know, so even even that energy when you're sitting in a room and everybody knows what's happening, it immediately impacts you.
Yeah.
It gives you this certain energy of like, wow, man, that's blues, man. That's the real thing. That's the real deal. You know, in connection to the concert with Mr. Golson, same story. It's like the real deal. It's I don't know what it is. I cannot put the words together, but it just felt like that's the real blues, you know? And if you play and that person, he looks at you and he smiles, or somebody from the crowd shouts at you, yeah. You know, that's the real deal, man. You cannot fool around. You cannot play bullshit, you know?
Yeah.
This is real stuff here we're dealing with. We're not playing around.
Yeah.
You better play your blues, man. You better play your language. You better play your things, you know?
Yeah.
And you have to convince them. And if you convince them and they react to what you do, then you know that you're doing something right.
Yeah.
So that was kind of that energy, you know? Same with that concert with Benny. He smiled for a second. I was like, man, okay.
You did it, yeah.
I did something right. That's it.
Because it makes me think of what you said before about your story that you did this gig with a classical pianist and he was reading jazz from the paper.
Yeah.
You know? And there's something that is so subtle about us. It's not even about musicians. It's just about people consuming music that very similar to language. It's like, you know, we both speak Hebrew. And if you would write phonetically to someone that doesn't speak Hebrew, just how it's supposed to sound, we would hear it immediately, like something is off.
Yeah.
So it's similar to that. Like I could imagine that being next to someone who's an actual authority of that is, I'm talking about Benny Golson, that he's an integral part of the development of this music, and the preservation of it was an integral part. There is no, I need to play this because this is jazz. I am jazz. I am a part of this integral language that happened there. So I could imagine that it also affected your playing, that you understood like, oh, I need to trim the fat, actually. Instead of like impressing, instead of showing like, because chops are just big words without content.
Sure.
And that's why I guess you went into the blues and all that stuff, because that's where, correct me if I'm wrong, that's where you were like really shown with your vulnerability and like nakedness of the knowledge, right?
On one hand, and on the other hand also that you had to play genuine, you had to play truthful, you had to play from your inners, not what you learned from around you, but really yourself. Being yourself, you know, and well, that's what I strive to do. And when I succeed being myself, then it feels right. You know, there's it's a different type of an impact. I guess.
What would be the advice you would give yourself, Itai, from 10 years ago? Having all this knowledge that you have right now, what would be the thing that you would, if you could sit for a cup of coffee with yourself, what would be the thing that you would tell Itai?
I would say what I just said. Trust your inner feelings. Do what you feel is right for yourself, first of all. First of all, for yourself, because you cannot expose yourself and deliver yourself if it's not something genuine, I believe, eventually. Or let's put it this way, if you deliver yourself without being genuine, people will feel that it's not really it. I can give you, again, numerous examples of music which I don't understand up till today, but I love it because I feel something about it. There's something about it, you know.
Such as?
One example is like a late Ornette Coleman, late Coltrane stuff, which is very abstract in many ways, or even, I am not a classically trained musician whatsoever. Ravel, Messiaen, things that I have no understanding of the theory or the knowledge or whatever you want to call it behind it. But when I listen to it, I love it. And that's it. That's enough for me. You can, of course, go and dive into why you like it. And then you can learn about all the theory behind it, the technical things, the knowledge behind it. But it has to be genuine, has to be truthful. So I grew up, of course, in when you go to school, also as a kid or later when I went to the academy, you have been influenced by what people teach you all the time and give you, and they opinionize their things sometimes upon you and tell you, well, you should do this, you should do that, you should go here, you should study that. Yeah. That's all good, but it has to be up to a certain point, and don't let these opinions affect you. I had many colleagues, friends, teachers maybe, always questioning my path of why did you take the Iwi? Why'd you go there? Why'd you do that? What's good? What's good at,
Like negatively questioning
Well,
it?
You may say so. Like you're still playing saxophone, right? Like this kind of like you're still with us, right? And in a way, it can also kind of like make you think twice. Am I doing something right? Is this what I need? And I was also there, obviously, because you're being affected from all these questions and all these opinions
of course.
But the bottom line is, I have no doubt that I'm doing what I want to do, and this is completely right.
Yeah.
And so my advice would be, if it feels right, and it's there. Sometimes it could take a while, for you to understand that, but be genuine, and if it feels right, do it. Do not think twice. Do not doubt yourself.
Yeah.
Once you know it, go for it. That's it.
Awesome. And what would you say to, I mean, of course it's almost repeating the same stuff, but
yeah.
I would like to know what is the thing that you would say in maybe a different words or like a different way of framing it to people that are just getting out of the conservatory right now, getting out into this jungle.
Yeah.
That is the music business, is the industry. It's very scary. It's like things are changing rapidly. Things are schools are not keeping up to the changes that are happening. It's like it's a jungle out there. What would you say?
I would say stick to your own guns. And everything's a process. Do not expect things to, fulfill themselves immediately. Take your time and work on your craft. And that's okay. So what I mean, like sometimes we expect to be, we finish school, we can do all this stuff, and then oh man, I have to make a living now, and it doesn't work. I've been working on this for a year and still I'm not getting any gigs. I'm not getting the recognition I want to get.
Right.
I can give you again. My story also involves a lot of up and downs.
It's very important actually.
Everything is up and downs, man. This year has been, the craziest of all. I'm reaching 40. I never had so much ups and downs in 1 year, but this is how it goes. So,
may I say something?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's true. I heard it from, let's say, 99 out of 100 people. I heard that. I'm not kidding. That this has been one of the weirdest, craziest, like, success, failure, success. Like, we're gonna make it. We're gonna die. We're gonna make it. We're gonna, like, even Joao is agreeing with me there. Different fields, different people, different lives. It seems like this year is we're on the cusp of something greater that is gonna either bring us back to the Stone Age or to a new Renaissance period. You
Yeah.
know, it's like a collective consciousness that is happening right
Sure.
now. But I would love to hear about it because it's like Instagram is not reality, huh? So
Yeah. So here's one story I can tell you. I started this year so bad, 2024, that I was selling instruments to make ends meet. I had to sell equipment because I didn't have enough money.
yeah.
And that went on for like a good 2-3 months. And suddenly, I wake up in the morning and I get a WhatsApp message from Mrs. Kinga Glick. Kinga Glick, I'm sorry. I have to pronounce it properly. And I didn't know who she was. I'm sorry, I confess. But she said,
before you, me neither. Huh?
yeah,
Sorry.
well, I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't know. And she writes like a message of like, hey, Itai, how's it going? I got your number from Joran Vroom. I'm looking for an Iwi player. Can you make these dates? So, and I'm like, what should I do? Like this? Should I look there? What should I do?
Thank the Baba Sali.
Yeah. So, from being bottom rock, suddenly, man, I'm back in the game, and not like just like that. I'm traveling all over the continent, playing concerts, the biggest festivals, whatever you can think of happened. So this is one crazy story, but what to say,
I think it's a story. I mean, this is funny because I'm pretty sure. I mean, of course, I'm generalizing here, but I'm pretty sure that any person that will be sitting where you're sitting right now could tell a similar story of like, I was like, I needed to almost sell my house to just be able to eat. And then something came. It's that thing of perseverance and resilience, and like to persevere and continue, like no matter what, continue being consistent. 'Cause life is going to just pull you like left and right to put you in this like distraction, like this vortex of distraction, which is going to pull you out of your center,
Right.
And then you're going to have more again a down, but because you already experienced that, you have thicker skin, you know what I mean?
I guess, yeah. It's the experience. So that's what I mean with the process, because you can work on your craft and on your music and just accept that it will take it could take some time.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, just, do what you can and expect that things can go wrong or good, but always continue forward.
Yeah.
I am, as I said, I'm reaching 40, and I can tell you that within maybe only since a couple of years, I feel that I've started to reach what I want to musically do. Took me 37 years, well, let's say 30 years to reach to a good starting point where I know, okay, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to do it. This is the type of music I want to play, and so forth and so forth.
Right.
So it takes time. Be patient and let it happen,
That's awesome, man. I think this is a great way to finish this, actually.
All right.
I mean, what are the plans now? What is sitting on your roster?
Oh, I have a couple of things on my table at the moment, on my plate. So I came up with a new album with a group, UsedToBeNew. This is my own group. And it's online. It's called Transduction. It's a very, very special album. We made already 4 or 5 albums, but this particular one feels closer to my heart because I sense that musically I found the type of music that I want to make with this band. Also the compositions and the production and everything that went with it was pretty much under my hands. So I'm very proud of it. It's kind of like the I made it eventually to something that I really want to.
Who's on the record?
Henning Luther plays drums, and Matteo Matsu plays bass. And I had Jasper Blom as a guest for one track, and I had a keyboardist by the name of Omer Rigi, all the way from back home. You know him as well. He played some Rhodes as well, and the rest is all the palettes I could everything I could bring in.
Henning Luther is my neighbor.
He's your neighbor.
He is just here in the corner. And what else? What is?
And now, actually, my current project is completely something different. One of the things that I do with the Iwi, since a couple of years, I got into sampling instruments. I had the chance to study that with a couple of Iwi EVI heroes of mine who taught me this technique. And I was doing that for a while, so I sampled all sorts of live instruments between brass and woodwinds and stuff. And I use that also with the group of friends. Sometimes you can hear all sorts of flutes, all sorts of, But I had this idea once, well, what if I would use this technique to try to revive instruments which are not played anymore? Which are not around us anymore, which are museum instruments. To put this technique into a sort of a, to bring something back to society, let's put it this way, a cultural gift.
You can get some subsidies for that, man.
Here we go. Exactly. So this project became subsidized, which is great. I'm very happy about it. And it's going to be a cooperation. I'm doing this together with the Rijksmuseum because they have a lot of instruments stored. This particular edition is focusing on a flute from the Renaissance time called the Richard Hakke flute. It was made here in the Netherlands, in Leiden. And I managed to find the only flute which is still around in the Rijksmuseum and sampled it.
Did you sample it yourself?
No, because I cannot play it. I had Kate Clark. She's a flutist and a teacher in the Conservatory of The Hague. She can play it. She knows how to play it. And she's also involved in this project. She played it for me. And I sampled it and did my thing on it. Yeah. And created a digital version, which is now played on the Iwi, which I play it now. So I dialed the sound and I'm playing the sampled flute. And what's gonna happen is I'm gonna compose music to it for Iwi playing the Richard Hakke flute together with an ensemble and present it in the Concertgebouw by the end of this year, hopefully.
Awesome. Look at that. That's what's up, man.
Yeah.
That's what's up. Anything else?
I don't think so. No, I mean, playing with different
stuff.
Yeah, Simon stuff. Group of friends is going strong. I'm very happy about it. Fun project, fantastic project. And playing with Kinga and playing other stuff as well. So
awesome, man. Itai, thank you so much for coming and doing this. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you.
Please follow Itai on all social media, on YouTube, and everything is going to be linked below this episode. And if you liked it, please like, subscribe, and follow us for more, because we have more content that we're going to create. And I would like to thank also Joao MB Costa, our producer and filmmaker here, that made this possible for us to bring it to the next level. And we'll see you at the gig.